We go inside Lamar Jackson's monster day against the Cleveland Browns in Week 4, and so much more coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I am your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravenswire, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here and making us your first listen every single day on Locked On Ravens. Are free and available anywhere you get your podcasts, all podcasting platforms. That includes over in video form on YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We're a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast, so Monday through Friday we put out shows consistently 6 a.m. Eastern time or right around then sometimes, depending on if technology likes me or not. But also we do live streams after every single game and also after every single piece of big Ravens news. So Ravens news, analysis, updates, we have you covered. So it's the same show, both audio and video form. You're not missing out any other way. So if you want to listen one day, watch another day, totally can do that because you're not missing any content. But if you want more exclusive content, be sure to subscribe over on Subtext, where we have text conversations, one-on-one conversations, and more exclusive content I'm going to be rolling out over there. So the Subtext link will be in all caps in the description below. Tell a friend, tell a family member. We got their Ravens coverage if they're a Ravens fan, or maybe they're an opposing fan. The Steelers, Bengals, Browns, we have them covered over there too. So for this show today, I'm really excited to dive into Lamar's day on Sunday against the Browns. It was, I think, one of Lamar's best performances for a number of different reasons. Other people, friends of this show, Spencer Schultz, Cole Jackson, a couple others have done dives into Lamar's day. Go support their work and check out what they've done. But I want to kind of reference those guys, and also, I did work of my own, and I want to talk about Lamar's big day and what I saw from the highlights, the tape, the throws he made, the runs, etc. Then in the second part of the show, we'll do more of, the general takeaways from Week 4 against Cleveland, what we can take away from that game, and something like what we did yesterday, where we'll do a couple of just overall takeaways from the season so far. Then we'll get into injury updates. John Harbaugh had a couple of those, David Ojabo, Morgan Moses, Tyus Bowser, etc. So lots to dive into. Let's talk about Lamar, though. Now, the stat sheet won't tell you that Lamar had maybe one of his best games of his career. 15 of 19, 186 yards, 2 touchdowns. His quarterback rating was 142.5. And right now he's completing about 74% of his passes. He's been dealing this year. Now, again, it's not the volume that counts here. The Ravens, I think, should have leaned into their rushing identity, and they did that on Sunday, but they put Lamar in really good spots, and Lamar delivered time and time again. One of the things that I was really impressed with by Lamar over the course of this game was just how poised and how locked in he looked. To me, I think Lamar's at his best when he trusts himself, trusts his teammates, trusts the coaching staff, and trusts the team. It felt like in this game, even though the Browns had a pretty vaunted front, Myles Garrett got to him a couple of times. I know Okoronkwo had a sack. Darius Smith was on that line too. Lamar didn't look like he was really worried about that. He was dialed in, making throws, and I think making the right reads. He was escaping when he needed to escape, tucking the ball and run when he needed to tuck and run. Sometimes over the course of Lamar's career, we've seen him throw when he should have run or run when he should have passed. I think he made the right decisions on pretty much all of the plays for him. And the incompletions, again, only 4 of them in this game. I think we don't really look at that. I think we should look at some of the completions he had. That one drive at the end of the first half. What the Ravens did to utilize Lamar, I think, a little bit better than they did. What Todd Monken did was he opened up the field and let things develop. And part of that had to do with some of the plays the offensive line had. The offensive line struggled for sure in some aspects, but I think the few plays that we did see them have a perfect rep. I think one of them was on that Zay Flowers huge catch where the offensive line held up Lamar, going through the reads, waiting for someone to get open. And eventually with that type of time, someone is going to get open, and it's on the quarterback to make a throw. Lamar sat there, scrambled a little bit, just worked his magic, throws a dart to Zay Flowers, and really in stride, Zay catches it, sets up a couple of really nice throws to Nelson Aguilar, who couldn't get his feet down in bounds. That was a great dot. And then to Mark Andrews. And part of the concept, Spencer did a really good job of highlighting this, is on the Mark Andrews touchdown. We'll do that. On the Mark Andrews touchdown, the Ravens had Zay Flowers run a short route to the outside, and Mark Andrews run the deep same route. So it was an up and out. So you go up and then cut out to the right side of the field. It was Zay Flowers ran about 4 or 5. He actually maybe ran a little further. I think it was 6 or 7 yards to go to the goal. Zay Flowers runs up and then cuts outside to the right. Mark Andrews does the same thing, just deeper. So Zay Flowers is probably about 2 yards, 1 yard from the end zone when he cuts out. Mark Andrews is at the top. And what you do is the defender who's covering the shorter route, if that defender goes up and starts to drift towards the end zone, you throw it short to Zay Flowers, and maybe he scores into the end zone, or maybe he just picks up some yards. If he goes up onto Flowers, you push it to the end zone because Mark Andrews probably has an opening. So the defender was kind of, Zay Flowers, I think Spencer said it too, I agree with him. He ran a bit too far up. So the defender was kind of in the middle of both, but Lamar put the ball in such a perfect spot, goes over to the defender's head, and it makes for a couple of really nice pictures, which we saw, and a great catch by Andrews going up. And it was really the only place Mark Andrews could have gotten it. Lamar threw it in that spot. With the same thing on that throw to Melvin Gordon, the same thing on the throw to Nelson Aguilar. He was just dialed in and dealing all day. And something else that I noticed, a lot of other people noticed, is he was sitting there and he was throw ready, as the term was. You know, people call it throw ready, where he's able to just, 1, 2, however many step drop he has, he's ready to boom right out of that drop. He's able to boom, fire it in. And he was ready all day to do that. And I think part of it had to do with the fact that, the Browns have a vaunted front, and you probably have to get the ball out a little quicker just on a consistent basis, where sometimes things won't develop, but things developed for the Ravens. As I talked about yesterday, the deep ball was working. Mark Andrews along a 36, Zay Flowers along a 43, Melvin Gordon along a 23. It's a lot better than what we saw against the Colts in week 3. And the other thing is what Todd Monken did with the offensive line, especially on Lamar's runs. A lot of pullers, a lot of guys moving, and it was mucking up things for the Browns. I think the Browns defense played pretty, I don't know. I don't want to say they played terribly, but they really didn't do themselves a lot of favors in this game. Myles Garrett was doing Myles Garrett things, but they were missing a lot of tackles. Their linebackers did not play very well. They honestly took out themselves. Like, they were taking out their own teammates on a couple of those runs. But the Ravens are doing a great job mixing up things and sending guys out and giving Lamar blockers in front of him. Sometimes they didn't even need him because the Browns defenders were just doing terrible Browns defender things and messing up the play themselves. But Lamar was ready all day, dialed in, and that to me gives at least me a lot of confidence moving forward for Lamar to continue this. The Browns defense statistically, now I have the screenshot, I'm probably going to post it on Twitter at some point today, was number 1, number 2, number 1 ranked defense in a lot of different categories. Lamar diced them up. Like, I thought that he was so ready in this game and so prepared. And part of it too was, again, with that, I don't want to call it a fear factor. I don't think Lamar is ever scared. But sometimes, like we saw it with when Alejandro Villanueva and then in that offensive line, when Lamar didn't have a very good offensive line and guys were going in and out of the lineup, guys were injured, Lamar, that clock can tick and it can speed up for these quarterbacks. It happens. It's not just a Lamar thing. It happens to every quarterback, where if you're consistently getting pressured and consistently getting hit, that clock speeds up and you're thinking, well, wait, I got hit 5 times early on this play. Is it going to happen this time? And that messes with a quarterback sometimes. Lamar, even though he did get hit a couple times, to get taken down a couple times, Myles Garrett had a couple of really, really nice reps on Patrick McCary. I know Daniel Falele struggled in this game too. Lamar just looked ready to throw the ball and was placing the ball placement from Lamar. I think consecutively, consecutive throws on one drive, that end of the first half drive might have been the best Lamar drive we've seen, especially on some of those plays where, Zay gets open, Lamar dots it in, Melvin Gordon dropped right down the sideline. And again, the Ravens were getting guys open. I think Todd Monken, outside of the first quarter and some change, did a good job of scheming guys open. You send guys in the middle of the field, you give Lamar check down options, and Lamar made those reads on Sunday. It was a big day for Lamar. And the fact that the Ravens were able to, again, average 9.8 yards per pass, Lamar did, open up the field. I mean, Mark Andrews averaged 16 yards per catch. Zay Flowers averaged 18 yards per catch. And that's on 5 receptions and 3 receptions, respectively. I thought the Ravens did a better job at opening up the field, and Lamar hit those throws, which were so big. But he did a good job of also, when he needed to run, he ran. And when he needed to throw, he threw. And that was very important to me because sometimes, and for any quarterback, that's a split-second decision. You have to make that. Sometimes there's a lot of green grass in front of you, but there's also an open receiver or a semi-open receiver. You got to make that read. The Browns defense did not have a good day on Sunday. I think the Ravens were definitely their biggest challenge, and the Ravens were up to it. Lamar, I think it's also a big day because the Browns defense was playing so well, and the Ravens were down Ronnie Stanley, down Odell Beckham Jr., down Rashad Bateman on the offensive side of the ball. And hey, Lamar did his thing. So big ups to Lamar for the huge day that he had. And coming up in the second part of the show, we'll talk more about Lamar, but also more takeaways in general from that big week 4, 28-3 win. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by Gametime. And there are plenty of times when people have frustrating ticket buying experiences. Sometimes you're not sure if the seats were good. Maybe you couldn't find last minute tickets. There were no good deals. But you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. So with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views for your seat, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And talking upcoming events in the Baltimore area, I mean, those O's playoffs start for them this weekend. It's going to be exciting. I'm probably going to try to make it out to a couple games myself. So it's going to be exciting. If you want to get those tickets, go through the Gametime app. The app is super easy to use. They have last-minute ticket deals, flash deals, zone deals. It's easy to find and buy tickets over there for every kind of event in your area, including concerts. There are some pretty good concerts coming up in Baltimore as well. You can view from all the seats in the venue, and they have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. They have all-in prices that show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. You can buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps also, and they're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats, find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for the Ravens, the Orioles. You go football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. And with those zone deals, you pick the section, and Gametime picks the seats for an average of 18% savings. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of that difference. That's huge. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. We're back for our second segment of Locked On Ravens here on Taco Tuesday. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you. I hope everybody's enjoying their day so far. I know the Ravens off today. They'll be back at it on the practice field on Wednesday before their big week 5 matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Looks like Kenny Pickett won't be available. I know there have been some rumblings that maybe he could play, suffered that knee injury in week 4. So I don't know at the time of this recording if Kenny Pickett's going to play or not. We're going to have to find that out throughout the course of the week. But the Ravens did get that big divisional win in week 4 against the Browns. And I just want to do a couple more general takeaways a few days after the fact. We did the live stream immediately after the game or a couple hours after. We also had yesterday's show, which was pretty good. We talked about how the Ravens are, to me, the early clear favorites in the AFC North. So if you want some more AFC North talk, at least more broad AFC North talk, be sure to check that out. But I guess we can start with the AFC North here too, but I'm not going to go in as much detail as I did in yesterday's show. The Ravens, to me, have the biggest questions are not for the Ravens, is what I'm trying to say. The Bengals have huge questions. The Browns have huge questions. The Steelers have huge questions. The Ravens have questions of their own. But what week 4 showed me is that, look, the Bengals might have to put their quarterback on IR, which was a huge mistake by them to do that. The Browns, they're still trying to figure out if Sean Watson can be the guy from Houston. Pittsburgh, even if Kenny Pickett is healthy, he doesn't look like the guy. Maybe they made a mistake taking him and might have to go a different route with their quarterback. The Ravens have their quarterback situation solved. They're going to get guys back. The questions to me is, can the pass rush continue to, at least be a little more consistent? I think I'd like to see a bit more consistency. Jadeveon Clowney's been awesome. Just needs to finish those sacks. That's a big question. But I mean, for me, it's, can the Ravens stay healthy? Like, can they get those guys back and not lose others? Can they get guys back and figure that out? So week 4 showed, look, the Ravens scored 28 points against the number 1 defense. The Ravens defense was awesome. And granted, there was Dorian Thompson-Robinson out there instead of Deshaun Watson. Nick Chubb wasn't there. But the Ravens are dealing with injuries too. Like, I don't like to use injuries as an excuse, especially when, a team like the Ravens has gone through them for so many years and past 4 seasons, it feels like every single week there's another guy that goes down. But even then, I'm just kind of like, look, everybody has to go through the injuries. But at this point, the Ravens score 28, the Browns score 3, the Steelers score 6, the Bengals score 3. I mean, at this point, I feel like the Ravens are the most balanced, most complete team in the AFC North, and that's what we talked about on yesterday's show. But in this game in particular, even though it was a rookie quarterback, there was no Nick Chubb, and you can talk about the injuries all you want to, the Ravens held the Browns to 2.6 yards per play, 1.8 yards per pass. That's impressive regardless how you slice it. It was Dorian Thompson-Robinson's first start, a 5th-round rookie. I get that. I'm not trying to completely just put that fact away and not say it's real, because it is. I mean, he wasn't ready. It was a really tough game for him. But the Browns, without Nick Chubb, still have Jerome Ford, Kareem Hunt just coming back, averaged 3.7 yards per carry. And it's a little weird because in both ways, Elijah Moore had a negative 20-yard carry, which was just a terrible play by him. And then Pierre Strong had a 40-yard run at the end of the game. So I guess it kind of balances out. But the Ravens' run defense did a really good job as a whole of shutting down the run, and the offense scored points to the point where Dorian Thompson-Robinson in his first NFL start had to throw the ball 36 times. Like that's not what should be happening here. The Browns, who have kind of made their bread and butter as a run team with Nick Chubb, granted, I get he's not there, but they should have been running the ball a little bit more than they actually did. And the Ravens did a good job of shutting down the pass catchers. I mean, David Njoku led the Browns with 6 catches for 46 yards, but Elijah Moore, 2 for 20. Jerome Ford, 5 for 19. Amari Cooper, 1 catch. Donovan Peoples-Jones, 1 catch. They did a great job. Roquan Smith is an absolute baller out there. Patrick Queen is going to get paid. That's a takeaway from me. He's looked incredible. Had a sack in this one, flying around the field. But the depth to me, like the depth that this Ravens team has, and I talked about this on the live stream on yesterday's show. I do live streams over on Bleacher Report. You can catch those as well. I did one of those yesterday and on Sunday. What I've been talking about all this time is the Ravens are not where they are right now. Absolutely not. They're not where they are without their depth, because guys have gone down. Guys have needed to step up in those absences. If Kyle Hamilton doesn't take on an even bigger role in the absence of Marcus Williams, if Geno Stone doesn't step in for Marcus Williams, if Brandon Stevens and Rock Ya-Sin and Ronald Darby don't step up for Marlon Humphrey, if Sam Mustipher and Patrick McCary don't step in for Tyler Linderbaum and Ronnie Stanley, Rashad Bateman goes down, Odell Beckham goes down, well, you have Zay Flowers and Nelson Aguilar, those guys making some plays. The Ravens have been hit with injuries hard this season so far, and I'm not shying away from that. It's an absolute fact. But they're not where they are if their depth does not play the way they have. So to me, a takeaway is that the Ravens built this, and I talked about it all offseason. I felt a lot more comfortable with the Ravens' depth, but my thing over the first couple of weeks was, okay, it's awesome they did that, and their depth was super built up in most positions, but they're losing so many guys that all of a sudden the depth is starting to be compromised, and you can only go so far down a depth chart before it starts to be an issue at a couple of different positions here. So outside linebacker, we'll get to that in the final part of the show, especially with John Harbaugh's update on David Ojabo. But Calvin Noy comes in, plays really well in his first Ravens game. Jadeveon Clowney, I mentioned, steps up. They've had a lot of contributions from a lot of guys who I didn't think I'd be sitting here, entering week 5 and talking about how Brandon Stevens has been a really good ball player for them at corner. The Ravens are going to move him to safety. And then he's played corner, played really well. Ronald Darby's been incredible. I think he's a top 15 corner in a couple different stats this season, which is incredible for him. Geno Stone, a couple huge interceptions. He definitely wanted to take that one against the Browns for 6 after what happened a couple weeks ago. He was feeling it, but unfortunately didn't happen for him. But also offensively, a takeaway. I know a lot of people are a little concerned about not only just the consistency of the offense, but the play calling late in that game, the conservativeness of it, I guess. The Ravens, to me, Dorian Thompson-Robinson instilled no fear into me. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, or it's not that whatsoever, but I didn't feel fear that, the Ravens are going 3 and out and they're punting the ball and they're trying to get the clock down and it's not working. The Ravens defense was playing so well and the Browns offense was playing so poorly that I did not think that anything was going to happen. And granted, it didn't. The Ravens played conservative and still scored on a drive. So Todd Monk is still figuring it out. My takeaway is that it was always going to take time. It was always going to take time. But Mike Macdonald has his guys rolling. The takeaway for me might be the fact that Mike Macdonald might get a head coaching opportunity maybe as soon as this offseason. I don't want it to happen. Mike Macdonald, please stay in Baltimore. But yeah, I don't know. He's been great. The Ravens it could be 4-0 right now, but woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? They deserve that loss against Indianapolis with the way they played. And here they are, 3-1, 2-0 to the division with a really big opportunity, I'd say, to go out there and be 3-0, done with all their AFC North road games by the time week 5 is done. But coming up in the final part of the show, we'll be talking about some injury updates, David Ojabo, Morgan Moses, more. So be sure to stay tuned. Still got a lot to get to on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use, too. There's a wide range of betting options that include spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. So for the Ravens, I mean, Mark Andrews, he was balling out. If you bet some Mark Andrews props over on FanDuel, you're probably feeling lucky right now. If you bet the Ravens, obviously you're feeling pretty good. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. We're back here, our final segment of Locked On Ravens Tuesday edition. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you. October 3rd, a big shout out to my mom, whose birthday was yesterday. So happy birthday, Mom. Thank you for all that you do. And of course, I love you and everything that you do for me and have done for me over the course of my life. And part of that includes supporting me here, doing this show. It's been great doing this show. Again, we're 5 days a week on Locked On Ravens, Monday through Friday. And again, after the games, we do live streams. So Sundays, Thursdays, Mondays, whenever that is, also big Ravens news. So be sure to subscribe in audio form, subscribe in video form, subscribe on subtext too for text conversations, exclusive content, and more. That'll be in the description below in all caps. Tell a friend, tell a family member too. Word of mouth is still very much a thing. I've definitely learned over the course of doing this. So I really appreciate all the support here. And we're continuing to grow the community, which has been awesome. But now it's time for the favorite part of the week for me, which is injury reports. I'm just kidding. This is awful, but we have to do it. The Ravens suffered a couple of more injuries, but there are also some updates on other guys who have been injured and wasn't necessarily great. So let's get the bad news out of the way first. David Ojabo. There apparently is some doubt that he's going to be able to finish the season this year. Might have to go on IR, season ending. The injuries, he has an ankle injury and a knee injury, I believe, the ankle knee stuff. John Harbaugh said that he has some decisions to make when it comes to that. And assuming he maybe has to, it might be the same situation Marcus Williams was in, honestly, where he had to decide on surgery versus rehabbing it and coming back. And Williams, obviously, as we know, opted for the rehab and practiced in full for 2 straight days on Thursday and Friday. Didn't end up playing in the Cleveland game. But I don't know. Feels like he could be back this upcoming week against Pittsburgh because of that. So we'll monitor that practice availability for him. But David Ojabo, it'd be tough. Like, I feel bad for him, honestly. There's a lot of discourse surrounding David Ojabo, especially in Ravens circles and, whether it be social media or whatnot, about what the Ravens should have done with that pick. Now, that offseason was very weird. Now, I remember doing streams. I was actually down in Florida doing streams and doing shows where it was the offseason. It was week 1 of free agency. The Ravens didn't do anything on the first day, and then they signed Marcus Williams and they signed Morgan Moses on day 2. Then they signed Zadarius Smith on day 3, or at least agreed to terms with Zadarius Smith on day 3. But then obviously he backs out and then apparently agrees again, but then backs out again, then goes to the Vikings. And there's a lot of discourse about, well, if Zadarius Smith had signed in Baltimore, would the Ravens have spent that second-round pick on David Ojabo knowing what they knew? And I don't know. I'm still a big David Ojabo guy. I think I definitely am. He's still someone that has a lot of potential. Even if this is a season-ending thing for him, it must be terrible for him, first of all, like the emotions he must be going through. But I know it's disappointing, the fact that he's shown the potential. I think everybody knows he has to have a bit more playing time and experiences on an NFL field to get to his full potential, and obviously not playing the majority of his first 2 seasons, if that's what it comes down to, is pretty gutting. Plus, it just guts the Ravens' depth a little bit. They just signed Kyle Van Noy. They have Jadeveon Clowney. They have Odafe Owe whenever he's ready to come back. Tyus Bowser, who we'll get to in a couple minutes. Tavius Robinson, etc. But again, it's a little disheartening that the Ravens, I know the whole debate is George Pickens. I mean, that's the guy that the Ravens should have taken George Pickens. It should have been George Pickens all the way. Well, a couple of things about Pickens. One, I was a big George Pickens guy. I was a huge Pickens fan coming out of that draft. I was also a big Ajabo fan. I think the Ravens got really good value on Ajabo considering he was going to be a first-round pick without the torn Achilles that he suffered at his pro day. There's still time for Ajabo. Even if he's out for the season, there's still time for him. It's just really unfortunate the injuries that have happened to him. But at the same time, if George Pickens gets drafted, I don't know if Zay Flowers gets drafted. And I know there's going to be some debates over the years, these many years upcoming about whether Flowers or Pickens is better. Both are going to be really good players at the end of the day, and their careers I think are going to be really good. But just a couple of perspective points there. So if Ajabo has to miss the season, it's going to have to be Owe and Clowney and Van Noy and Bowser when everybody's healthy to step up in that room. Speaking of Bowser, John Harbaugh did say that both Bowser and Keaton Mitchell have a chance to return from IR and the NFI list this week. Now, obviously, he wasn't super committal on that, but he said they're in the realm of possibility of practicing. So John Harbaugh, I think after the Lamar situation last year, is going to keep things as he has done, very close to the vest. Wouldn't anticipate major updates. I think he's just going to, as he said, let the practice report speak for itself. But it's at least encouraging that he said that. It's better than him saying, yeah, they're far away. Now, Marlon Humphrey, John Harbaugh said he's also within the range, but he said that he couldn't set a date. He said he was hopefully get back last week, but he said he's hopefully back this week too. So I don't really know. I think the Ravens had a specific timeline. Obviously, could have come back could have come back this week. He would have had to miss the 4 games, could have come back here in week 5 if he was put on IR. So I think the whole debate was, well, why do you put Marlon on IR if he's not going to come back until the IR date in the first place? I don't necessarily think they needed the roster spot, but I don't know. Maybe they could have used it for something like running back depth, offensive line depth, outside linebacker depth. But maybe he plays this week, maybe he doesn't. He was really also complimentary of Justice Hill after coming back from his injury as well. But the thing with Morgan Moses, that's the big one. Morgan Moses was the guy who went down in the game against the Browns and was his arm was limp. I thought it was maybe a pec injury, but they called it a shoulder. But John Harbaugh said he had an MRI that's being evaluated. They'll know more on Wednesday, so we'll get the updates probably tomorrow. But John Harbaugh said it doesn't look like something that will last all season. So to me, that says maybe he'll be out for a couple of weeks. Maybe it's the same deal as Marcus Williams, where it might be a pec injury or a shoulder thing that keeps him out for a couple of weeks, and then he's able to come back and be on that offensive line for, I don't know, maybe the second part of the season. But Baltimore's bye comes a little later in the season, not like totally like week 13 bye, but the Ravens just have to get healthy at this point. Hopefully you get Odell back at practice this week. Hopefully Rashad Bateman can come back as well. We'll see with Marcus Williams. We'll see with Ronnie Stanley as well, who is back on the practice field. So it seems like a lot of these guys are close, and that's the silver lining with a lot of it, right? Where outside of J.K. Dobbins, maybe Ardarius Washington, maybe David Ajabo, a lot of these injuries, at least they are able to come back, or they're going to come back at some point. It's not like they've lost Marcus Peters and Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins and LJ Fort and all these guys to injuries for the season. They should come back. In the reinforcements, again, we'll push those depth guys who've been playing really well back down the depth chart. And again, if a guy goes down, you can push them back up because they've already played super well. So the Ravens are in, I think, a decently good spot right now. They have to continue to improve, continue to stay healthy and work out some of the stuff that needs fixing. But 3-1, 2-0 in their division, I think that's really solid for the Ravens through 4 weeks with a big week 5 opportunity against Pittsburgh to end their AFC North road slate in week 5 at 3-0. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel to support me, support my work. I really do appreciate everything and all the support I get here on the show, on the channel, social media, wherever. It's been amazing. Be sure, again, to follow along here on the Locked On Ravens journey and my journey. I really appreciate that too. More Ravens content coming, of course, tomorrow. Talking Ravens, talking more week 4 action, and of course, previewing some week 5 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So be sure to stay tuned for that. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.